Egypt's international bonds led losses across emerging markets yesterday as investors reconsider some of the optimism around aid from the IMF and Gulf countries. Bloomberg's Simone Foxman has more. So, Simone, the weakness that has emerged in U.S. dollar bonds, I mean, that is yet another red flag.
Certainly. And what we saw yesterday was that 9 out of 10 of the top 10 worst emerging market bonds were Egyptian bonds. But I think it's important to look at this in a little bit longer term context. And to do that, we have a chart, GTV Go for clients, that shows credit risk, CDS, around 5-year debt. What we've seen is that risk has been rising, that we've been trending higher in terms of risk all year. But that said, we are not at the levels that we were in October and November, especially before a deal with the IMF for a $3 billion loan package was reached. So while there is concern, and our Sylvia Westall and Mireille Magdi had a great piece on this a couple days ago, there is concern about whether exactly when and how much aid from the IMF and Gulf countries is forthcoming. All of these players want to see Egypt make the reforms that are part of this IMF package. They also want to find, where do we go with the Egyptian pound? Where is the floor on where this gets devalued? That said, you look last week at the Sukuk offering, $1.5 billion of Sukuk that Egypt issued. There was healthy demand there. And of course, Egypt remains a decently popular choice for emerging market sovereign investors. So there's risk, but that risk is not stopping people from being in this asset class entirely.
Yeah, we're still waiting to hear from the central bank governor or from the finance minister in the last couple of weeks and in the month or so ahead. Now, let's get to Turkey, where sources tell us that authorities are cracking down on landlords hiking rents. Put that in context.
Yeah, our colleagues report that authorities are considering prison terms of 2 to 5 years for landlords that make what they call excessive increases in rent. No word yet on what actually constitutes an acceptable level of rental increases, but this in the wake of those earthquakes which damaged so much of southern Turkey. But there was already a housing crisis in Turkey even before these earthquakes set in part caused by inflation, part caused by a flood of Russian buyers. Housing prices were up 177, such a big number, 177% on a year-on-year basis before the quakes. Now, President Erdogan says there are 2.2 million people at least that have been displaced by these earthquakes. Housing prices expected to move higher even from here, and all of this will pose a challenge to Mr. Erdogan as he prepares for elections come May.
And then finally, the UN's nuclear watchdog finds that Iran's stockpiles of enriched uranium have surged. What's the latest there?
They're particularly watching uranium enriched to 60%. This is enriched uranium that's technically indistinguishable from weapons-grade uranium already. Iran says it has been quite public that it's producing this. So the amount that it has increased, we understand, by 40% in the last 3 months alone. But this is not really the surprise. What we're very much looking for is an investigation that the IAEA is conducting into even more enriched uranium it has found. 84% enriched uranium. Sources tell Bloomberg that they still don't know how that uranium was produced. Was it produced intentionally or not? But that is very close to weapons grade. All of this, however, the increasing amounts of 60% enriched uranium, this other enriched uranium to 84%, no one knows where it came from. All of this inhibits diplomacy with the West because it means Iran is ever closer to the ability to create a nuclear weapon. And from that point, it's unlikely to move backwards.